Did the Las Vegas Aces really earn that win over the Indiana Fever, or did the referees practically hand it to them? Because when A'ja Wilson is seemingly allowed to commit 37 fouls without consequence, moving screens, elbowing, and obvious shoves on Lexie Hull, it makes you question whether this was a basketball game or a carefully scripted performance.
Only A'ja Wilson could get away with this. Look at this. And ESPN called this a highlight. You could clearly see both feet come off the ground and land again. That's illegal. And let's check this out, a double dribble. She spins, touches it with two hands. Like, this is first grade stuff. The refs, of course they miss it because it's A'ja Wilson. She's dribbling, touches it with two hands on a spin move, gathers it, and passes to a teammate. And watch this at travel. That's her pivot foot. Like, this is some Angel Reese type stuff. Like, 3 in 1 game? That's horrible.
In this breakdown, we're revealing the whole story. A'ja Wilson's stat padding, the lopsided free throws, the calls that were mysteriously ignored, and the bizarre whistles that turned what should have been a dominant Fever performance into an officiating nightmare. Fans are already calling it a stolen series, and when you hear what Lexie Hull said after the game, it all makes sense. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you make of A'ja's special whistle?
Anybody see in the fourth quarter, A'ja Wilson's trying out for an offensive lineman position in the NFL? And then look at, if you don't want to be pissed off, don't watch this. In overtime, a moving screen with 2 minutes left, and this is the biggest shot of the game after fouling out Boston for less.
How does one player seem to get her own personal rule book while everyone else is forced to follow the real one? That's the question looming over this entire semifinal series. Look closely at the stats between A'ja Wilson and Aaliyah Boston, and it stops feeling like coincidence. It starts looking like deliberate manipulation. Across 5 games, Wilson strides to the free throw line 26 times. 26. Meanwhile, Boston, grinding for every rebound, taking hits in the paint, and getting mauled on nearly every post-up, only reached the line 17 times. And here's the clincher. Almost half of Boston's free throws came in a single game, Game 4, when the Aces were intentionally fouling in the final minute just to run out the clock. Strip away that desperate stunt, and the gap between Wilson and Boston's free throws becomes completely indefensible.
I think it was a physical game, you know. I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Aaliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league. She never gets a call. And you know, there's a double standard there, certainly. But you know, again, if it's going to be physical and you're gonna allow us to be physical, then allow both teams to be physical. If you're going to call the holds and you're going to call the chucks, and you're going to then call it both ways. So I mean, I think that we've been pretty consistent in what we're asking for, and I didn't feel like it was consistent.
Now let's rewind to games 1 and 2, and things get downright absurd. Aaliyah Boston, the Fever's defensive anchor and arguably one of the best post players in the league, didn't attempt a single free throw in either matchup, not one. Meanwhile, A'ja Wilson was racking up fouls off phantom contact, light brushes, and incidental bumps, while Boston was getting hammered in the paint with barely a whistle blown. How do you make sense of that? You can't. This isn't a matter of playing styles. This is selective enforcement. The ball ran through Boston on every possession, yet it was as if contact simply vanished whenever she touched it. 2 straight games with 0 calls. That's not coincidence, it's preference. The foul numbers over the 5-game series tell an even harsher story. Boston was called for 19 fouls, while Wilson had only 14. Consider what was really happening on the court. Boston was guarding Wilson almost every play, contesting drives, absorbing elbows, and staying vertical on every shot. Wilson, meanwhile, was often switched onto smaller Fever players to conserve energy, rarely matching Boston head on. And yet somehow Boston ended up with more fouls. How does that make any sense?
And look at these moving screens. She totally destroys Lexie Hull. And guess what? They get a 3-point bucket off that play. They didn't call that an offense foul. Look at this one. Do you see how she sticks her leg out? They wonder why they get wide open layups and 3-pointers. Look at the room it makes when you set an illegal screen. That's why it's illegal. Another one, look at this. She moves over and it's just enough time for her teammate to get a 3-pointer off. Watch how she does this. She thrusts her hips at the end. Look at, thrust her hips to get that extra space, and she gets an open layup. Like I said, 4 offensive fouls they didn't call, and they got 10 points.
Watch the footage closely, and it's impossible to ignore. A'ja Wilson was running moving screens like it was her full-time job, shuffling her feet, leaning her hips, and throwing her shoulders into defenders to open up Jackie Young or Chelsea Gray. Analysts reviewing the tape tallied 37 uncalled moving screens from Wilson over the series. 37, that's nearly 8 per game, and not a single whistle blew. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston could barely set a clean pick without being penalized. The double standard was so glaring, the Fever bench's frustration practically radiated off the screen. It was like the game had become a one-way street, fouls piling up on Boston while Wilson moved freely, untouched. Boston stayed disciplined, hands up, playing straight-up defense, and still got called. Wilson, on the other hand, drove shoulders into entry passes, hooked arms on rebounds, and barreled through defenders with 0 consequences. Call it tough officiating if you like, but eventually it stops being about the calls and starts looking like protection, a kind of protection that preserves a story rather than the integrity of the game.
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. You know, and when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. And you know, we didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
And that's the uncomfortable question nobody at the WNBA office seems willing to ask. Was the league's so-called superstar being protected? Because looking at this series, A'ja Wilson's special whistle doesn't feel like a myth. It's backed by the numbers. Step back and examine the facts. 0 free throws for Aaliyah Boston in the first 2 games. A total of 17 over 5 games compared to Wilson's 26. Boston picked up 19 fouls, Wilson only 14. Despite 37 documented illegal screens, Wilson walked away untouched every time. Every statistic points the same way, and it's never the Fever benefiting. When you layer these numbers over what actually happened in the clutch of Game 5, it stops being suspicious and becomes outrageous. The favoritism stopped hiding behind the box score and started influencing the outcome in real time. This wasn't just missed calls, it was whistles actively shaping the final score. The Fever didn't lose because of bad play. They lost because every time they gained momentum, the whistle pulled them back. And when Lexie Hull spoke out about what she endured guarding Wilson, the elbows, the off-ball shoves, the moving screens that went uncalled, fans saw it clearly. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern, a protection plan, and the Fever were on the wrong side of it. Game 5 was meant to be a showcase. 2 generational talents going head-to-head. Aaliyah Boston versus A'ja Wilson, fighting for a finals spot. Instead, fans watched a 3-hour battle between the Indiana Fever and the referees. The night that should have determined the better player became a masterclass in who the officials wanted to protect. This wasn't competition, it was control.
So we got a 4-point game in the middle of the third, and this is an offensive foul, right? That's what the refs say. This is how fair the WNBA is, but this is not a moving screen. That was way worse. And not only that, it led to 3 points and called this a foul on the Fever. This is the worst moving screen I've ever seen. And this in the 4th quarter in a 4-point game. Oh, it gets worse. In overtime, a moving screen right in front of everybody. And then guess what it leads to? A 3-pointer in a 2-point game with 2 minutes left. Another moving screen. Instead of calling this a moving screen on A'ja Wilson, they call a foul on the Fever. I can't make this crap up.
The first jaw-dropping moment hit in the 3rd quarter. Aaliyah Boston set a screen at the top of the key, solid, stationary, feet planted. Perfectly. It was textbook execution. Then came the whistle. Offensive foul. Moving screen, they called it, but the replay told a different story. No shuffle, no lean, no advantage gained. Just a clean, legal play erased for no clear reason. Even the commentators were left speechless. That phantom call didn't just cost a possession, it disrupted the entire flow of the game. From that point forward, Boston had to move cautiously, hesitating on every play, terrified that another invisible foul would bench her.
This is considered a foul in the conference finals of the WNBA. Oh, you mean A'ja Wilson's on the opposing team? It's all starting to add up and make sense. You have to cheat to win basketball games.
Then came Megan Gustafson's over-the-top performance. Boston received the ball in the post, executed her move, and Gustafson flew backward like she'd been launched from a catapult. The slow-motion replay made it obvious. Minimal contact, barely a brush, yet the whistle blew. Another foul on Boston. 2 questionable calls in a row, each chipping away at her confidence and turning her natural physicality, the very thing that makes her dominant, into a liability. Meanwhile, Asia Wilson kept powering through defenders, untouched, racking up free throws like they were nothing.
So there was a huge flaw on Boston's 3rd foul. Did you see Boston's 5th foul? And then to foul her out on a 50-50 ball with 27 seconds left is wild.
Then came the decisive moment. Late in regulation, Boston positioned herself perfectly under the rim for a defensive rebound. Arms up, solid stance, textbook form. Jackie Young nudged her slightly, stumbled, and somehow Boston was called for her 6th foul. Disqualified. The game was tied, the tension was at its peak, and Indiana's defensive anchor was forced to watch from the bench as her team's chance at victory slipped away. The arena should have erupted with playoff energy. Instead, it sank into stunned disbelief. Without Boston, the Fever's defense crumbled, and the Aces took full advantage. The contrast between the 2 stars couldn't have been clearer. Boston stayed disciplined, contesting every play without fouling, maintaining her composure even as the call stacked against her. Wilson, meanwhile, leaned on every whistle to fuel her offense, drawing contact, exaggerating every brush, and heading to the free throw line like clockwork. Fans noticed. Everyone did. Social media exploded with slow-motion clips, side-by-side comparisons, and frame-by-frame breakdowns of each questionable call. Those 3 moments, the phantom screen, the exaggerated flop, and the rebound foul, didn't just define Game 5. They decided it. One of the league's top defenders was taken out by the referees, not Asia Wilson. Yet somehow the Aces had the audacity to claim they had overcome adversity.
But Aaliyah did say I have a special whistle, and she shot 13 today.
She said that to you?
Yeah. Yeah, she said the last game I had a special whistle, which is cool.
What do you call it when the team that benefits from every whistle suddenly plays the victim? Is that the Las Vegas Aces playoff strategy? Because that's exactly what happened after Game 4. Asia Wilson, standing at the podium with the calm of someone who'd been getting every call all series, had the audacity to claim the series was rigged. Let that sink in. The very player who spent 4 games practically living at the free throw line was now presenting herself as the one being targeted. Through 4 games, Wilson attempted 19 free throws compared to Aaliyah Boston's 15. And yet, despite Boston absorbing all the hard hits and relentless contact in the paint, somehow in Wilson's version of reality, she was the victim.
So while you're looking at that box score, I'm wondering what's really standing out to you there.
I was just looking at the fouls. Like, Liz had 5, Jackie had 5, Chelsea had 5. And that's very interesting to me because I'm not saying we don't foul. Yeah, we foul here and there, but that's very interesting.
The irony is almost insulting. Through the first 4 games, Wilson picked up just 12 fouls. Boston, 14. And this isn't some random number pulled out of thin air. Boston was tasked with the toughest job in the series, guarding. Wilson one-on-one nearly every possession. Meanwhile, Wilson was out there setting moving screens that would make a football coach wince. And the referees, they might as well have been blind. Flip the scenario for a moment. If Boston so much as brushes a guard on a pick, you'd see an official sprint across the floor blowing the whistle. But when Wilson does the exact same thing, complete silence. Play on, nothing to see here.
I gotta go back and look at the tape, but it seemed like there was a lot of grabbing and holding down there. That got called one way.
Anything else?
I did appreciate it was a little tighter called, but tighter on both ends would have been nice.
And it didn't stop with Wilson. Becky Hammond, the Aces head coach, jumped right on the bandwagon. In Game 4, she picked up a technical foul after unleashing on the officials, shouting about calls like the universe itself was out to get her team. But this wasn't some one-off incident. The Aces have made this a recurring tactic. When the heat rises, they erupt, blaming referees, the media, or anyone within earshot. It's a clear pattern. Deflect from their own mistakes, claim they're being targeted, and dare the officials to overcompensate. It's emotional manipulation wrapped up in the guise of passion.
Megan had 4.
What? Oh my God, that's interesting. That's what I was looking at. But we'll do better. We gotta play better defense.
By interesting, do you mean that shit?
Yeah. I can't say that because I got a brand to protect. But
Say it, I have no brand.
yeah, it's interesting. But we'll be better.
That's what made Wilson's post-game comments so transparently strategic. It wasn't genuine frustration. It was a calculated move, perfectly timed before the decisive Game 5. She knew exactly what she was doing, planting doubt in the referees' minds, making them question every whistle that might go against the Fever. And wouldn't you know it, it worked almost flawlessly. In Game 5, the officiating tilted so far in Vegas's favor it bordered on comical. Boston fouled out on phantom contact. Wilson kept heading to the line as if it were her personal ATM. In the final 2 minutes of regulation and overtime, the Aces attempted 13 free throws, 13 in just 2 minutes. That wasn't basketball, it was theater. Are we really expected to believe Wilson's rigged comment didn't influence that? The moment she played the victim, the officiating went from questionable to absurd. The message was clear: protect the Aces, preserve the narrative, and make sure the league's supposed face stays comfortable. But while Vegas leaned on politics and pressure, the Indiana Fever responded with something far stronger: grit. They didn't complain, they didn't manipulate, they fought. Lexie Hull, Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston battled through tilted whistles and stacked odds, refusing to back down no matter how unfair the calls. That's what made this series unforgettable. Not the Aces' manipulation, but the Fever's defiance. In Lexie Hull's own words, this was an incredibly physical series, and though she hit the floor countless times, she's proud of how far the team came.
I feel like this game, between the adversity but also the resilience, was just like a microcosm of this whole season, and did that in a way, like, you're like, oh, we've been here before.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Steph said in the huddle. Like, we're built for this moment. When Kelsey went down, and then we're challenging the call on AB. We've been here before, so it's just so unlucky, so crazy that had to happen tonight.
The Fever didn't lose this series because they lacked talent. They lost because the Aces couldn't win without outside help. Game 5 wasn't decided by skill, it was decided by a whistle. Yet Indiana walked away with something far more valuable: identity and purpose. Aaliyah Boston's "we over me" mindset showed the team's unity, while Caitlin Clark, cheering from the sidelines, proved this story is just getting started. The future for this squad looks unstoppable, but if the WNBA wants to keep any credibility, it owes the fans an explanation. How 37 uncalled fouls stripped a young contender of its fair shot at glory. Drop your thoughts in the comments on what you make of Wilson's so-called special whistle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an update. Click the video on screen, and we'll see you in the next one.